Hello, and welcome to Your Vote Counts, a public informational, nonpartisan service program designed to get acquainted with the candidates vying for the 2022 general election races of Congressional District 6, Senate Districts 10 and 11, House Districts 17 through 23, Salem City Council, and Marion County Commissioners. These interviews come to you through the producers of Capital Community Media and in collaboration on questions and moderators from the Association of University Women, Salem City Club, and the League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk counties. All 27 candidates for these races were invited, and all but 6 chose to participate. Candidates did not receive the questions, which were developed and prepared by the League of Women Voters ahead of time. Candidates were invited to prepare a 2-minute opening statement addressing their background and qualifications for the office, as well as a 2-minute closing statement addressing their goals for the office should they be elected. My name is Toma Cadu, and I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk counties. And it's my pleasure to introduce Richard Walsh, who is running for House Senate District 11. Welcome, candidate Walsh. We're now ready for your opening statement.
Thank you, Tamika. I appreciate the opportunity. I am Richard Walsh, and I'm running for Oregon State Senate District 11 to be your next senator. And I'm an Oregon native. I've lived here my entire life. I have 5 wonderful children. I'm engaged to a wonderful woman. I have 1 foster child and my fiance's son, who I've also helped raise. And I have lived here my entire life. And I have, I guess I put myself through college and law school. And when I graduated from law school, I got a job at an insurance defense firm, actually. And when I was working at that, it just didn't feel right. It wasn't a good fit. It wasn't what my heart was in. And I realized that what I really wanted to do was to represent Oregonians, ordinary Oregonians, against insurance companies and large corporations and government, quite frankly, and to help them get their claims that they are entitled to get those claims established. And to advocate for them and to be, to champion causes that are righteous, really against people that are trying to keep them from getting what they're entitled to. So I have been doing that for the last 30 years. I started with the company I was telling you about. Then I moved to Salem, Oregon in 1989 or so. And I have been, and then I quickly started my own law firm, and I have been representing injured Oregonians this whole time basically against insurance companies and government, doing Social Security cases, workers' comp cases, and so on. I have also served on the Kaiser City Council for 10 years, and I championed a lot of causes. I volunteered on over 40 committees to try to get an idea of everybody's interest and what is important to them. As an attorney, I know it's important to know your client in order to advocate for what they want. And so I have been doing that. I did that on the city council for those 10 years. And that's why I went on those 40 different committees. One of the committees that I started and worked on and completed. Is it time?
It's time. We need to move on for some questions.
All right. I'm so sorry. I get carried away.
Well, we appreciate that background information. Now let's give you an opportunity to address our questions that we've developed for this interview. Our first question is related to the Inflation Reduction Act. Can you please discuss it and what elements will benefit Oregon?
Well, the Inflation Reduction Act, of course, is an act that the federal government is proposing, and I do support it. I think that a lot of the things in there are helpful. To be honest with you, I haven't studied the act extensively because it is a federal act and not a state act, and so I'm not as familiar with it as I would like to be. But I think that the issue of having to fight corporate greed and to try to make sure that everyone's getting a fair deal is really important. And the way I would attack inflation on a local issue, the things that I want to work on is like prescription drugs that are going, the cost has just been skyrocketing. And I think we can do a lot on a state level to address that. The way I want to address it in specifics is we can work with Washington and Oregon and California, and we can all work together to negotiate. Even if the federal government is unsuccessful in doing that, I think our state government can absolutely work as a unit. We can work with Washington, California. There's already been some impetus for that, and I want to continue that. And we can negotiate with pharmaceutical companies to make sure that all of our residents get good prices, and that will help with inflation. Other things to help with inflation is on housing. I think there's a lot we can do for housing affordability and the prices people are not able to afford anymore. And we can do a great deal to attack housing affordability well, we can do a lot of things. One of the things we can do is we can help finance on a more reasonable basis some of the more creative options for home ownership, things like tiny homes, things like condominiumizing apartments, I think is a good idea, where you have actual affordable housing, not just expensive housing subsidized by the taxpayer, but actual affordable housing options. We can create more of those. And so the people that are able or want to live in those types of affordable housing can do so, which will take pressure off the market, which can have the effect of lowering housing prices overall. I think there's a lot of ideas we can do like that can attack inflation. I commend the federal government for working on it, but I think as a state senator, I would like to work on the things we can do to make prices come down and for people to afford to live a good life. And another thing, I guess one last thing, I don't want to overlook the idea of public amenities in order to fight inflation. Now people say, what's that all about? And I'm like, well, if you can't afford things anymore, you can't afford to buy your books, we can now, support the library so everyone can have access to that. If you can't afford to join a country club or a sports club or whatever, let's have nice parks so that everyone can enjoy that. There are ways we can have public amenities that will address inflation in kind of an indirect way, but I think it actually will enhance the real problem, which isn't necessarily the inflation, it's the standard of living. And we can do things on a state level to very much enhance standard of living for everybody, even if the federal government's printing up a bunch of money or even if there is inflation nationwide.
Thank you for that. What do you think about renewable energy tax credits?
Well, I'm strategically placed. I'm in favor of that. I think that we need to, we know a direction we need to go for climate change and for basically our environment and for our economy. And we know that we want to go in that direction, but going there is very sticky. Trying to get the industry started, trying to get recyclable materials into wind power blades and batteries and things like this are of utmost importance, but they're not really commercially viable yet. And the market it will only get there, it will get there quicker if we can do these subsidies. And so I think it is a good idea, but they need to be strategically placed and not just handing money out. But I think if we can figure out, okay, where do we want to go and how do we get there and what's the best way to incentivize private industry to be able to do that and customers to be able to participate in that process. If it's a thoughtful process, I think it's absolutely a wonderful tool that we can use.
Moving on, what steps should be taken to address Oregon's youth mental health needs?
Well, I think part of it starts with the schools, and I think we really need to support our school programs. We need to have more school counselors. We need to have a more accepting environment in our schools. I think that we can do a great deal to address the youth mental health needs. But you know what? It's part of a bigger problem. We need to address everybody's health. Oregon is the worst state in the entire country. I think it's the worst or the second to the worst in the entire country in terms of mental health care for everybody. I mean, we've kind of taken an approach of, slap and get over it kind of approach. There's so much more we can do. And it is affecting everything from the youth that you mentioned to the homeless crisis, I think is in large part caused by mental health crisis and our failure to care for that and to take reasonable steps to take care of it. I think we need to be investing. I think it's one of the top priorities we're going to have is to address mental health care for students, for adults, for disabled. I see it all the time in disabled people that are trying to manage their new lives and not having the care that they need, and it spirals into mental health care that then spirals into physical health care. I can go into this all day long, but the basic idea of healthcare needing to be addressed as a core issue for all kinds of problems that we're having is something we need to face and just deal with.
Thank you for that. What is being done to protect and support county election officials and their support staff as they conduct election duties? Is there anything else that should be done?
Yeah, I think there is some things we can add to it. I think this is really just an embarrassment and a horrific problem that we have. These people are volunteering their time and efforts to help with the election process, our very foundation of our democratic system, and they're being attacked. And I think as a very minimal, we need to have. I think it's time to revisit the availability of people's names and addresses and things like that on the web, in the internet, in government documents and so on, to protect the identity of some of these people. Now, I do understand that there are needs. It's always this battle, between the public need to know and the safety of workers. But when it comes to poll workers and election workers, and I mean, we don't have that as a major issue here in Oregon because we have vote by mail, but we do have people working in the system that are being threatened, in the Secretary of State's office and things like that. And we don't necessarily have to have their identities available to people. I think we can take steps to protect them. And I think that's the first step. There's, of course, securing buildings and physical barriers. And it's horrible that we have to think about those things. But I think we do have to also think about security and those things. Of course, toning down the rhetoric and the vitriol and the anger that people are feeling toward our side versus your side, and claims that the election has been fraudulently stolen, and claims that encouraging, we need another audit or something like that, which I've heard a lot of. All that just spikes it up and makes it worse. And people, somebody somewhere is going to take the law into their own hands and try to fix this thing that has been all whipped up. I know it's politically viable sometimes, or beneficial to whip up anger, be the person that'll take care of it. But the reality is we have a pretty darn good election system here in Oregon that is very reliable. And if the vitriol could calm down a little bit, then everyone will be safer.
Let's explore the economic forecast, which is predicting a 2024 kicker for taxpayers. How do you think this relates to rising inflation, recession, and a stable economy?
Well, I don't think the kicker relates to inflation. I think we got a lot of things happening that is all tied together to cause the inflation, and a lot of it is federal, and some of it is worldwide. We have had a tremendous amount of influx of money into the system from the federal government, and that is, I think, has been a contributing cause. I think that there's other factors that are involved, including, quite frankly, corporate greed and opportunism that has also played a role in all of this, and we can keep an eye on that. I think that I'm trying to remember what was the question again, the last part.
Oh, I asked how it related to inflation, rising of inflation, recession, and a stable economy.
Okay, yeah. So I think I guess I don't think the kicker relates to those things. I think there's a lot of factors that do relate to it, and I would like to address not just the causes of it, because I think, like I said before, I want to address the prescription drug. I think we can do things where we can make an impact in the state government in order to address inflation. I want to do that, and otherwise, what we can do is help the citizens to meet that inflation, which I think is more of a national issue than a state issue. But our citizens in my district, in District 11, I want them to be able to handle that. And we can do that in ways I've mentioned, plus deal with healthcare costs and other types of costs, and make sure we have unemployment insurance in place that's strong. And there's a lot of things we can do, and encourage a healthy wage for everybody, which I know it can cause a little bit of inflation, but it also fights inflation because now people can afford to pay the prices that are out there, which are caused largely by national forces.
Let's talk a little bit about education. How do you think we should be addressing the teacher shortages Oregon is experiencing?
Well, I think teachers have been undervalued and underpaid and underrepresented. Well, they really had. I don't blame them for leaving in droves. I think teachers and nurses have been the most beat up in this pandemic and this consequence. And I think they're especially teachers are horribly underpaid for their work, and they are underappreciated and they've been belittled and through the pandemic they've had to endure a tremendous amount of abuse. I think there's a lot that has been done to to basically gut a lot of the ranks and file of the teachers. And I think that we need to do everything we can. Our most precious resource is our children. And what we need to do more than anything to help our children is to support our teachers. And I don't think we've been doing that like we should be. And I think that what we can, is that the time?
Thank you for that. Yes.
Okay.
And that's going to be our last question of the day. And Candidate Walsh, I'm going to invite you to share your 2-minute closing statement about your goals if you're elected to office.
Well, so my goals are basically they're many-fold, but it kind of goes back to my reasons why I'm running. And the reasons why I'm running is the issues that I care most about are the same kind of things that I've been talking about. Is I want to champion for the underdog and fight for them against insurance companies and the powers that be and so on. And I've been doing that 30 years of my life law practice, and I want to take it to the next level in my work in the Senate. And what that means is, advocating for the homeless and for those that are needing affordable housing. And there's a great many ways that I can talk about how we can attack those things. But that's one of my big issues. Another issue is fighting for healthcare. I think that we absolutely have a broken system in regards to healthcare, and we can do there's a lot we can do in the short term. Like we can try to get the next phase of the Oregon Health Plan to cover seniors that are receiving Medicare. I mean, all we'd have to do is cover basically the cost of the supplemental plans and the dental and vision. We wouldn't have to cover the whole thing because there's Medicare. So there's a lot of reasons why I feel that the senior population has been beaten enough. They've been paying into the system their whole lives. They deserve to have the next, if we can afford it, if we can find a way, the next break so that they can take a deep breath and relax in their retirement years and know that they'll be taken care of because they have paid their dues. So I think that's important. And there's other places we can go to make healthcare more affordable, including the prescription thing I was telling you about earlier. But ultimately, I really would like to get to healthcare for all. And I know it's a huge burden, but the only way to get there is if we can make it a win-win situation. You're not going to get there by putting all the burden on this portion of the population or that portion if they're going to have to pay a ton more than they're paying now. So what we got to do is recognize we are currently paying a tremendous amount of money into healthcare, including the amount of federal subsidies that are going to Obamacare and the Medicare and the Medicaid and the veterans benefits. And we can get that and gather all the resources together and save a tremendous amount of money because we're not paying for advertising. It should be an embarrassment that we have a MOTA center.
Thank you.
Am I already there?
2 minutes go fast, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Thank you, Richard Walsh, for our interview today and for sharing your thoughts. Thanks to Capital Community Media for their extensive technology and producer skills used to create this program. Thank you to the League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk counties for the design and preparation of the program, and to AAUW and Salem City Club for help with the question development and moderators. And thanks to you, the public, for watching in order to become a more informed voter. For more local, state, and national voter information on candidates and ballot issues, visit vote411.org. You have until October 18th to register to vote or to make any changes to your registration. Ballots will be mailed out around October 19th or 20th, and according to a new law, will be accepted if postmarked before or on November 8th. Elections matter. Remember to vote because your vote counts.